We have Sheriff Derek Wheatley from Scott County on the live line. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I mean, holy crap. What a weekend, huh? Again. Let's just go with again.
You're right. This has been a unusual storm season that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it just seems like it's picked three paths. It likes Perry County, it likes to run through Cape, and it loves to run through Sykeston. And I don't know what the heck. I guess they don't call it Tornado Alley for anything, but that doesn't make it any easier when, people who've lost everything are helping out their neighbors, and then the next week you got to help out your neighbors because they've lost everything. It's just it's cyclical, and the damage this time is just unbelievable. You had an EF3 down there by Blodgett. EF3.
Yeah, that's what I just seen, and ironically, it was almost a year to the date that Sykeston had the EF3 come through.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and EF2s and EF1s all over the place, and Kentucky just got mangled with an even bigger one. So it's like there's not much you can do. It's hard to get out of the way, but there's so much damage along I-55, and you and I have both driven that road a million times. And you always look at those little houses along the side of the road. You think, what a nice little life. How great that they're gone.
Yeah, you're right. It's everything there on the south end of Sykeston by the drag strip took a tremendous hit this past round.
Yeah. So I know the Red Cross had to shut down in Sykeston. They've still got one open in St. Louis, but there were a lot of even places where you would go for help that had to shut down because they had damage.
Right. Yeah. And, there's still other organizations out there, churches, and I know the school district of Kelly has closed down school on Monday and Tuesday to help with counseling of any students who need it, or they're also setting up, taking donations.
Yeah, that needs to happen because, clothes are great, shoes are great, immediate needs are great, but people need money because some of them were uninsured. And I know a lot of people are like, why didn't you have insurance? Because we just came out of an economy that was a slice of hell. So a lot of people had to choose. And this storm didn't make their choice any better. So helping as much as you can is what we need to do. So was there loss of life in Scott County? I heard there were two.
Yeah, there was. Unfortunately, shortly after the EF3 came through the south end of Sykeston, we began the search and recovery efforts, and we did have two of our county citizens who were found deceased.
Were they in a regular house? Did they just not hear the warning? Does anybody know what the situation was?
I think a lot of it is the rural areas, just, the storm sirens from towns just don't reach them. So, we encourage everybody to get a weather radio or throw on a weather app. But I think this one just, we knew that day there was very likely we was going to have an outbreak somewhere, and it just, happened quickly than most people expected. And, they were even in two different areas of the county, so it wasn't even the same neighborhood.
And that's just it. I mean, you couldn't have run from it because you would have run right into the other one.
Right. Yeah. When it came through that day, a few of us told it to just make sure it wasn't hitting any high populated areas, and it stayed on the ground for a good while there in Scott County.
16 miles, Derek. Over 16 miles, it stayed on the ground and just shredded everything. Now, gratefully, a lot of it was field and rural stuff, but it decided to just destroy everything in its path. When it crossed the interstate, and I was watching a storm chaser who had the tornado live on his phone, were you not shocked at some of the cars who just kept driving? I was like, what are y'all doing? I guess they didn't realize it was a tornado.
It's always interesting to see, but, that one was pretty defined and a clear picture of it. It wasn't rain wrapped or anything. It was debris wrapped, obviously, but it was, to me, it was obvious what it was. But yeah, it's always alarming or concerning to see people continue on through that.
It's crazy to me. All right. So we might have severe weather again tonight. So I want everybody to understand that you're not always going to hear the sirens, and a lot of people are so dependent on those. If the storm is loud enough and violent enough, they're hard to hear.
Yeah, you're right. I went through the F3 and Sykes myself last year, and it's a unique sound, and I think if you hear that, what you think is a unique sound or train, then you're probably in a bad spot. I would advise to seek shelter, cover up as much as possible, especially your head. And, I think everybody needs to make sure they got all their weather apps on, updated, radios on, and make sure you're prepared for these overnight storms that's going to probably looks like hit when most people will be in bed.
Yep. And we were at graduation with this last one, and the warning came for Cape. There was nowhere to go. We were in basically a giant Jim Quonset. So, I mean, there's nowhere to go. So you got to have a plan for everywhere you plan to be if severe weather's in the forecast.
Yeah, that's right. And, you also can't rely, the storm sirens, we always can't stress this enough. Storm sirens are meant for people outside, not inside your houses. You can hear them in your house, but you shouldn't rely on that as your only source.
Right. And the siren will go off if there's a tornado anywhere within 15 miles of your house. But people need to remember it could drop directly on your head. So
yeah, you're correct.
You need to be aware before the siren goes off. I don't know how to get it through people's heads how important this is, but I think now that we've had enough trauma for the last few months, and I'm horrified for the people who need help, but I think everybody's starting to get the picture a little bit better, and I hate that it takes something like this to wake people up, but we're definitely awake now, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so, and you never know is the main thing. So I think for whatever reason, the weather pattern has shifted more over the counties you mentioned earlier, especially with us in Cape County, and I think just overall the whole state's taking more tornadoes than normal.
Yeah. Missouri and Kentucky have just been mutilated by tornadoes this year. I know we're not the only ones. I get that other places get them too all over the world, but we're focusing on us because this is where we are. So I bet your 911 operators were working their tails off, and you guys were running ragged trying to get officers and deputies everywhere they needed to be. It was a busy night.
It was, our comm centers, all 911 centers get overran, and, not only do they have to deal with public calling in, they got to also deal with us. So it gets real busy on them, but I'll say that night, for response efforts went as well as it could have gone that I've seen in any storms. Mm-hmm. Neighbors came in from outside agencies, and people just went right to work. And I know it may seem a long time for some, but, we had to fight through debris fields and power lines. And, some routes we couldn't even get down roads and had to, make our own roads to get to people. But as a first responder, look on it, it went smooth on that end, even though I hate saying that because we did lose life and have several injuries.
Well, you can't always be everywhere all the time. There's only so many of you. So I know when people are calling for help, they expect you to be there in 1 minute, and it's just, I mean, you're not superhuman. You're in cars. You're in vehicles that need roadways to drive on. You can't drive through muddy fields because the rain was saturated. You would have got stuck. I mean, all those things came into play. The power lines were down. The trees were on fire in some areas or smoking. And it's just, you have a very dangerous job, but y'all are happy to do it. It's just, this was a night where a lot of people needed help. So do you have counselors for your officers too, your deputies?
Yeah, so we have several local counseling groups that always offer help, and we also have a local peer support team that is made up of police, fire, medical field, any first responder type of employee is made up on this peer support group. And that's, because they you can talk first responder to first responder type mindset, and they understand a little more. Mm-hmm. But yes, there is help out there for our people, any first responders, and if anybody else needs help, we can help facilitate that also.
Yeah, absolute devastation. for so many people. Do you know how many structures were lost? Any idea? Any sort of estimate?
No, I haven't talked to our EMA director of FEMA past day, but my estimate for Scott County is probably 50, give or take.
Yeah. Well, I know that one little stretch.
Several of them were total losses too.
Yeah. I mean, those manufactured homes were gone like they were toothpicks. They were just gone. There was nothing left.
Yeah, you're right. And there's even some brick structure homes that, were completely gone. And
obliterated.
One I can't even think of seeing a brick at all where it was at. So we took a good hit, but, the county came together and people help people, and that's what we like to see.
And that's where I wanted to go next in the few minutes that we have left. A lot of people aren't there to help. They're in the way, and they make me angry. Information gets disseminated through all of your media outlets. We post pictures so that you can see. We post drone coverage so that you can see, so you can stay out of the way. If you're not there to help, don't go.
Yeah, you're correct. And, we also understand there's friends and family who want to check on their loved ones or friends in the areas, and I can relate to that. But then on the flip side, we also have people who want to come in these devastated areas to start stealing, scrapping, not be there to help. And so, we did take in some help from medical staff that night, just because we were having to do a field triage, and people we knew who were medical, who weren't first responders, we let them in to help, but others we tried keeping out. But, you're right. Them onlookers, they clog up our route, and we can't get in the medical staff we need to attend to these people.
Yeah, I really feel there needs to be an ordinance for that, because it's just, and it happens every single time. It's like, we get that you want to look, but this is somebody's life that has either ended or been destroyed, and you wanting to just gawk at it to take pictures for social media or whatever the case may be, it's just not okay. It's just like, move on, stay out of the way, let them do what they have to do.
You're right. And also storm chasers were kind of hindering us that night also.
Yeah.
I get some of them are there for the scientific study, but most are there for their 15 minutes of fame. And my warning for them in the future: if you're coming into Scott County and going to hinder us, you're going to be sitting roadside and towed.
There you go.
We had a lot of people that were storm chasers in our way, not moving for us even.
Well, you know what? That's when you just bring out the biggest truck you have and just ram them out of the way. I just don't have any patience for stupidity. Those sorts of things, of course, people are curious and they want to see, but everybody knew it was going to be a huge tornadic event, so every storm chaser in the country was here. But some of them had the at least functioning brain cells to pull over to the side of the road and get out of the way. You can film from the side of the road, too. You can do that.
Yeah, you're right there. And some just refuse because they want their 15 minutes, and we're more than welcome to give them more of their 15 minutes of fame another way.
Yeah, we'll make you famous. We'll make you famous, said Billy the Kid. All right, so Derek, with all this happening, I know you had a lot of other agencies come in and help, and that's just how we do things here in Southeast Missouri, isn't it?
It is. Our communities work well together, police, fire, EMS, hospital staff. So, again, I hate using the word it goes smoothly, but as far as organizing and handling these situations, it goes well. And the citizens are more willing to help, too. And like I said, sometimes we allow it, sometimes we don't, just because of taking that extra chance of other injuries. But sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we will, have citizens assist us, but in a controlled manner.
Yeah. And as media, sometimes I have to go into those sorts of areas, but I'm generally not going to be the one who's standing in your way so that you can't do your job. So get out of the way of the first responders and let them do their work, and the media will let you know what it looks like after the fact. You don't need to be up in there while it's happening. So were any of your emergency responders injured during this incident?
No, we have, that I'm still aware of, we have no injuries to any first responders. We probably took some vehicle damage, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is fixable. Just going through field debris, and we did have some large hail for quite a while, but all that stuff that's all repairable. So we had no injuries to our guys. Many first responders, they all worked their tail off, and I can't praise them all enough.
Yeah. Just, you know how much I back law enforcement and fire and everybody else. Just good job getting to everybody as much as you can and getting there to help as much as you could. Just good job, Derek, and everybody else, and just let's sing your praises. And thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.